Hello. My name is Izzy, Zigzag Hettmansperger. Some of you may know me as Izzy. Some of you may know me as Zigzag. They are both my names. And this is Multiplicity and Bughood, Queer Methods of Artistic Self-Reflection. I just want to start out by thanking my family for being here. My mom, my dad, my aunt, and my grandparents. And I also really want to thank everyone who helped me with this, just making everything happen and everything possible, and also the whole dual degree class for being here to support. And I love you guys. Pretty simple question to start. What's your name? Everybody just shout out your name right now. Nice to meet you. Where are you from? What's your concentration? What do you like to do? Who are you? These are all questions that we have asked countless times here, particularly during our first year, but sort of every year. It's a lot to come to Brown and RISD and just be surrounded by so many new interesting people and have these questions asked over and over again of you and of other people. And during my time, I really started reflecting on who am I. When I first came to Brown, I feel like I didn't really know who I was, and I was trying to figure it out while I was meeting all these people and being asked all these questions. And really all I knew is who I was. So I kind of felt like when I was a freshman, that's me when I was a freshman, I didn't really know who I was going for. But I took a freshman seminar my very first year, and I was trying to figure out who I was by taking Who Am I, which was a sociology class, and it was a small seminar of 15 people, but this is a slideshow that my friend Lucinda and I worked on. Shout out to fellow Dooley Lucinda, where we were talking about the presentational self, which was a huge takeaway that I had from this class. Sociology isn't very scientific, but philosophically, I feel like I took a lot away from this class in terms of thinking about how my identity and selfhood was shaped by the world around me, and how basically there's this theory that like no part of you is inherent to your personality. Everything is just sort of washing over you over time and determining kind of the person that you're going to turn into. I think this class and other classes and just exposure to everything really started making me ask new questions, like what do I value? Who do I admire? What makes me happy? And who do I want to be? So I know who I was, but it's a big question trying to think about who I want to be, especially because I contain multitudes. I came to Brown and RISD because I didn't want to pick just one major. And I had a lot of academic multiplicity. I also had a lot of social multiplicity, and there were many different types of people that I wanted to hang out with and types of people that I thought maybe I did want to be. My majors are illustration and computer science, but from that, I was trying to think about what kind of career path I wanted to do. And even within each career path, there are just a million other little career paths. And I feel like just my entire time at Brown, I've been like trying to figure out everything all at once. And it's been quite a lot, but socially, and with your social identity determining so much about who you are, I feel like it was a lot to try to take in also just the social aspect of being at Brown and RISD and meeting so many new people and figuring out so much about what kind of people I get to spend time with and what kind, like how people view me. And I've been overwhelmed. There's been a lot of anxiety for me in college. There's been a lot of uncertainty and fear and just generally being a little bit scared of what comes next. But I want to also touch on like why I'm just talking about myself, blah, 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 just all about me. I make artwork about me. And I feel like that's a great starting point for anyone to make art, just thinking about their own personal history and memory and joy and pain and human experience so that we can start to relate to others. And I feel like I really have gotten to a point where I'm starting to understand myself. And in a lot of ways, making art about myself and about my experiences is therapeutic and helps me work through a lot of these turbulent feelings that I've been having throughout college. And it also helps me connect with others about their human experiences and their memories and what they have in common with me. I feel like we all got a little break from the excitement when COVID happened. We got sent home. And I think this was a particularly self-reflective time for a lot of us in that we were so trapped within ourselves, within our communities. Something I did was I went through all the junk drawers in my parents' house and I pulled out all these little trinkets. And I was like, I'm gonna make art with these. I was just like remembering and feeling so much with these objects. And I actually ended up making this installation in my bedroom, my childhood bedroom, where I made all of these large-scale drawings that were self-portraits, incorporating the spaces that I was living in my parents' house, and also these little trinkets and all of the threads of memory that are associated with them. So yeah, these are like large-scale acrylic and colored pencil drawings, and all of the little elements are 3D, just hot glued on. But yeah, this was definitely one of like the first times I was really thinking about memory and identity in my art in like a really huge and exciting way. So basically, I kind of decided for myself that making art and getting to know myself were going to go hand in hand, and that as I moved forward, I was going to try to use art as a way to figure myself out a little bit. I want to shift over to the other title of this presentation, which is Bughood, and thinking about bugs, specifically metamorphosing ones. So I want to play this video for you if we have time. This was a video that I made my sophomore year at RISD, and I'm going to just play it and I'm going to let it speak for itself.
By now, most of us are familiar with the typical life cycle of butterflies and moths, right? We go from egg to caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly. It's that simple. But have you ever stopped to think about what's really going on inside of that chrysalis? You might picture a sort of teenage butterfly, a caterpillar sprouting wings in there. But if you were to cut one open, you would find just goo. Goopy, gooey, liquefied caterpillar. Picture snot. And then imagine a whole butterfly emerging from that snot. The caterpillar's organs, tissues, everything breaks down completely and becomes soup, cells. Delicious. For a long time, humans equated this process with death. The chrysalis was a coffin from which new life, the butterfly, emerged, like a phoenix from the ash. But studies show that butterflies remember things that happened to them when they were caterpillars. Even though their brains are liquefied and dispersed for a few weeks in between, somehow those neurons find their way back together. So that intermediate state, it isn't really like being dead, but it isn't really like being alive either. It's its own state, a unique state necessary for the metamorphosis that butterflies and moths undergo. Can you imagine if humans went through something similar, being liquefied like that? How would it feel, and what would we turn into?
Shout out to shout out to my parents for loving podcasts and like suggesting I listen to this crazy podcast about what happens inside the chrysalis, because this actually like was the biggest animation project that I'd ever tried. I just sort of figured out how to use this one animation program, and I made this, and I got a really, really good response. And I felt like it was a really cool way to combine my love of the natural world and also this like philosophical, like poetic voice of mine. But yeah, let's get back to bugs, because they've been a huge topic of consideration this year. You might notice that I'm wearing some kind of strange costume. We'll get to that. The scientific definition of bugs is any order. I don't care. My definition of bugs is that they are tiny outside critters. They skitter and they buzz and they flap. And if you point at it and go, "Yup, that's a bug," then that's a bug. Don't worry about it. But why bugs? Bugs have been something that I've sort of had a general affinity for a while, but I feel like they have become this symbol for me and for other queer people in my community, for sort of defying societal standards of like beauty and like what is gross and what is wonderful. And I think that there's a lot to be said about just appreciating something so harmless but harmful and annoying but also kind of beautiful. And I also think that their life cycles, especially metamorphosis, like I was talking about, is kind of taken for granted. Like it's a pretty insane thing that organisms on this earth do. And so it's very fascinating to me. But yeah, so I have been thinking a lot about complete metamorphosis, which is these 4 stages. And I've been using them to talk about bughood, which is basically a framework for analyzing my personal growth and my stages of life through this metaphor of complete metamorphosis. So I've lined it up with different sections of my life. So I can talk about it a little bit more here. The egg stage is small, full of potential, untrained, and just existing. The caterpillar stage is small but impactful. This is when I developed preferences, taste, hobbies, and a personality. And I was pretty unbothered by outside forces at this point, and I didn't even have any little poison spikes on me. So as a chrysalis, I feel like this kind of aligns with a lot of people's sort of puberty. It makes sense. Social norms start being pressured on you, and I was trying to blend in to some extent. Chrysalises are very vulnerable to attack, and a lot of them disguise themselves as dead leaves so that they'll just kind of get left alone. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was shy when I was going through puberty, but I was definitely like a little bit more reserved than where I am now, which I would call myself a little bit of a butterfly. I do feel like I've grown a lot and that I, to some degree, am flying, and I'm very happy with myself, and I'm very aware of how I sit in the world, and I'm very interested in standing out and being my own person and not being afraid of how other people see me. So yeah, I'm basically going to talk about art that I've made now. And I'm going to talk about the art that I've made that's about the art that I've made a little bit. So we can apply these stages to my art practice in a way. Because throughout my life, I've been making art. Like when I was a little kid, I was making art. And then I've also now been making art in college about the art that I made when I was a little kid, and nostalgia and all these things. So if you see the bar on the left, it's art that I made when I was younger. And if you see the bar on the right, it's art that I made in college. So yeah, we'll start with the egg and some very, very wonderful drawings that I made when I was 3 to 5 years old. These are wonderful. They're joyful. They're fun. This is everything. I loved finding these in my parents' house a couple years ago. And I ended up making, actually one of my first animations was this weird, like surreal film just called Les Êtres dans ma petite tête. I lived in France when I was this age, randomly. And that translates to the beings in my little head. And I just sort of put them in this weird context of this animated world, but it wasn't fully what I was like picturing. And so I actually revisited this idea, and I was thinking about the brain matter of my brain, and how these weird creatures exist in my brain, but like I don't really remember making all those drawings. Like it's somehow the person who made those drawings doesn't really exist anymore, but is somewhere in the labyrinth of my brain. And so I made this weird VR experience where you travel through all these tunnels, and then you come across this grand hall of these weird floating childhood drawings. Yeah. So as far as caterpillar art, I I was an iterative kid. I drew a lot of the same thing over and over again. These I wish I could read the poems. I don't have time to read the poems. I wrote poems for all of these animals. And they're like weirdly like violent and scary because I was really obsessed with warrior cats and guardians of Gahul. And anyway, I thought these drawings were like a really cute introduction to talking about series. This is another series that I did. I made this in 7th grade. It's this enormous anthology of just the same character that I drew over and over in different scenarios, which was delightful. But I made a couple of artworks later on in college addressing this. I had this large installation where I made this tent out of fabric that I silk screened, and I had all these toys everywhere. I made these toys, I 3D printed them, and I put them in packages. And I was thinking about consumerism in the way that like kids get so obsessed with like series and icons, and like these little things just like really stick around in our brains. And I actually ended up making some more animations based off of this series just this last December. I'm moving a little quicker now, but this was really hard to get into. This is the McLiberal's pronoun meal, now with toys for all 13 plus genders. This is one of my most controversial pieces. This is supposed to be like a toy display case for like when you walk into a McDonald's, but all the toy, like it's like this like weird apocalyptic McDonald's where they think that the liberals want us to have 13 genders of Happy Meal. And I made weird, really bizarre, surreal toys out of clay that I had in there, and all the genders don't even make sense. And it's very like campy, and I'm just sort of like playing up almost the like conservative stereotype that like liberals want all these things that's not the point. So that was really fun. And then I can't talk about being making art about childhood without talking about Rainbow Head, which was this 15-foot tall plush sculpture that I made. It's appeared at a couple different places now. I feel like it's kind of iconic of the work I've made, and seeing it in person is really different. It's actually going to be in the Illustration Building Gallery at 500 Canal Walk starting June 15th for Pride Fest. So you should definitely check that out. But yeah, getting into the chrysalis a little bit, we're getting a little bit closer to when I was in college. This was this series that I made when I was a high school junior, and I was making a fictional story about this boy who was reflecting on his childhood and was making all these masks to represent these like people and his family members. And I don't know, there was like a lot about like feeling kind of like I was wearing a mask and like I didn't really know who I was, and feeling like masks were somehow a very important symbol to me that I kind of retrospectively relate to this chrysalis era. And then I also want to talk about how the chrysalis stage represents like sort of a confrontation with like body and like having one, because I've made a lot of work about meat. I had this show called Meat and Barbies, which is, my parents are giggling because that's based off of a random dream that I had when I was a little kid. Don't worry about it. But it was a really cool solo installation that I got to do at Brown. And I filled out this gallery space. I put my Bedtime Heroes tent in there. I put Rainbow Head in there. And then I also had some, I also had some other one-off pieces that I made that we're really, addressing the topic of body and meat and just sort of trying to figure that all out. And then as far as the butterfly, I'm running out of time here, but I've been working on this whole semester on the bug show, which is really hard to get into. But basically, I collaborated with a bunch of artists from the Brown and RISD communities to make bug costumes. And then we took to the stage, and all of our costumes are caterpillars on the outside. And then we had a weird performance art stage for the chrysalis. And then on the inside, we reveal our true colors. I was really privileged to work with a lot of creative people on this. We worked on the costumes together. I also had video artists. I really encouraged my artists to really think hard about how these designs could reflect their identities and like how they were as a little kid and how they are now, being sort of visually explained through being inspired by nature and being inspired by this metamorphic cycle. And I also had the privilege of working with video artists on making projected backgrounds for the performance. I wish I could show you the whole thing. It's 25 minutes long, but I condensed some art and writing from other members of the community, including people who worked on the show, into this zine that I distributed at the show, which is a full-color printed magazine with different stories from queer artists about how they relate to this the metamorphosis metaphor, which was really cool. So yeah, just sort of getting back into multiplicity as an ending point. I feel good about multiplicity now, and I feel really good about how this reflective process has allowed me to accept that I have been many things throughout my life. I will be many things throughout my life. Personally, I know that like I will be able to express myself openly. I will continue to be fluid and change throughout time, and I will prioritize joy and lifelong learning. And academically, I think my multiplicity is one of my biggest assets, and hopefully will make me a very multifaceted designer. Hey, what about that computer science degree? Does this mean you want to be a fine artist? What are your next steps? I actually want to, this is a little video of my portfolio website, which I coded. I think there is an intersection between what I want to do in my two majors. I want to go into basically digital 2D animation, which is called motion graphics when it's applied to commercial settings. So I want to make like graphics for social media, for websites, videos for YouTube, marketing, advertising type stuff. And I've done some really cool work. I wish that this GIF was smooth, but it's not. I promise my work is very fluid and lovely. But yeah, I coded it. Yep. I love web design too, but it's probably not going to be a huge facet of my career, at least at the very beginning. Maybe I'll come back to it. But yeah, actually my path to loving motion graphics started with this video. This is one of the first videos that I was really like, whoa, animation is like totally for me. So these reflections are coming together, and yeah, I'm starting to think about maybe if I want to do public art. And I really like the idea of engaging the communities that I'm embedded in the future and making more interactive sculptural opportunities, performance opportunities. I also plan to just keep making whatever art I want to make. And I love selling jewelry and also tattooing, which is a very new thing that I've really appreciated getting into. And I'm feeling very good about my personal life. I'm moving to Boston. And I'm looking forward to the person who I get to be in the future. So as far as thinking about complete metamorphosis, starting to think about what happens beyond complete metamorphosis. And that's really where we're ending for today. So thank you.